The psychological trap of isolation. No one prepares you for listen. You can stockpile a decade's worth of freeze-dried food. You can master fire starting with wet kindling. You can memorize every edible plant in your region. And you can build a shelter that would make a wilderness instructor weep with pride. But here's the thing. Nobody tells you about surviving alone after everything falls apart. Your own mind becomes the most dangerous threat you'll face. And it happens so gradually that you won't even realize you're losing the fight until you've already made decisions that could kill you. The psychological trap of isolation isn't some abstract concept discussed in survival forums by people who've never spent more than a weekend camping. It's a documented, scientifically measurable cascade of cognitive deterioration that begins within 72 hours of complete social isolation and accelerates with terrifying efficiency the longer you remain cut off from human contact. And the worst part, the symptoms feel rational. They feel like clarity. That's what makes isolation so insidious in a collapse scenario. Because when your thoughts start spiraling and your judgment starts crumbling, your brain will convince you that you're thinking more clearly than ever before. Let me paint you a picture of what actually happens in your brain when you're truly alone for extended periods. Because this isn't about feeling lonely or missing your friends. This is about fundamental neurological changes that occur when the human brain is deprived of the social interaction it evolved to require for survival. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and rational thought, begins to lose functionality within the first week of total isolation. Studies from solitary confinement research show that prisoners in isolation start experiencing measurable cognitive decline after just 7 days, and by day 15, they're showing symptoms that mirror early-stage dementia. Their ability to process time becomes distorted. Their capacity for logical reasoning decreases. Their emotional regulation collapses. And here's the critical part. They don't realize it's happening. A prisoner might spend 3 hours arranging pebbles and patterns and genuinely believe only 20 minutes have passed. They might make decisions that seem completely reasonable to them, but would appear obviously irrational to anyone with normal cognitive function. Now imagine that same cognitive deterioration happening to you in a survival situation where every decision could mean life or death, and you have no one around to reality check your choices. The first symptom most people experience isn't depression or anxiety, it's something far more subtle and far more dangerous. You start talking to yourself, and not in the casual way you might narrate your actions while cooking dinner. You begin having full conversations with imagined versions of people you know, and these conversations feel completely real in the moment. Your brain is so desperate for social interaction that it starts manufacturing it, creating phantom dialogues that fire up the same neural pathways as actual human conversation. The problem is that these phantom conversations don't provide the corrective feedback that real social interaction offers. When you talk to a real person, they challenge your assumptions, they point out flaws in your logic, they offer different perspectives. When you talk to an imagined person, they only reflect your own thoughts back at you, which means any paranoid or irrational thinking you're experiencing gets reinforced instead of corrected. A survivor isolated for 2 weeks might have an entire conversation with an imagined friend about whether the government is sending drones to track survivors. And because that imagined friend agrees with every escalating fear, the survivor becomes absolutely convinced that drone surveillance is real and imminent. They might waste precious daylight hours building elaborate camouflage for their shelter or relocating to a worse survival position because they've talked themselves into believing a threat that doesn't exist.